everyone for attending the May meeting for the West Dakota Water Development District. As we begin, the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, you noticed.
Yeah.
Second item on the agenda is roll call of members, and we'll have the admin do that.
Some money.
Okay, Koth.
Here.
O'Shea.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Kerr.
Here.
Okay, item number 3. So as everyone has known, that Area 5 has been empty. According to our admin, someone has presented a valid petition with the 25 needed signatures that were verified, that 25 people of Area 5 would like this person to be as a director. The person in question is Dan Mullally. So the traditional item that we have done this, and granted, as someone who came in the same way to the board, we'll let Mr. Mullally give a brief elevator speech on why he wants to be a director and give us name, a little bit of background. I know everybody knows him because he was our admin previously, but if Dan would like to say a few words before.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I was admin since 2018, so I'm familiar with the operation. And I also live in Rapid Valley, which is Area 5. And I've worked with several people out there, not necessarily dealing with issues with this board, but on other issues that affect the valley. One of them is water. For example, the Hawthorne Ditch has been a big deal out there. The city bought the water rights and shut it off, so the hydrology of the valley is really dying right now, so there's a water issue there. There's some other things that we're exploring. For example, on Reservoir Road in Longview, there's a pond there, and a big open area would be make a nice park. And so what I kind of view my position is, since I know a lot of people out there, I'm familiar with the issues. I've worked with Director Driscoll on some things out there, and I can bring those to the board as needed. And going the other way, tell the people out there what the board is doing there. There's also Valley Heights Development has a water issue with their wall drug water tank up there on Radar Hill Road. So that may come up again. So the position is relatively short. It's only going to be until December of 26. So that's the short description of why I would like to, and I was asked to by people out there also, and by a couple of the directors here, to step in and fill the vacancy for that period of time.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? Yes, Dan?
I would move that we approve Mr. Mullally as the director for this vacant position.
Is there a second?
I'd second.
Seconded by Carr. Okay. All those in favor of...
Discussion?
Discussion. Yes.
Well, I'd like to say a couple things. One, I'd encourage Dan to apply for the position, and obviously he knows what it is we do, and above and beyond that, I guess my observation has been that over the course of the years, I've seen more people from Rapid Valley come to West Dakota meetings to talk about water issues than probably people from all of the other 8 districts combined. I guess to me, a lot of them have been here because they know Dan and, you know, he's invited them to meetings, so, that's been part of it. You know, I guess I kinda consider him the voice, the ears of the valley, so I'm really happy to see Dan applying for this position.
Yes,
I guess I want to add that I'm not just, my area goes all the way to the Cheyenne, so it's a pretty big area. So there are possibilities of things out that, in no man's land out that way. And down to 44 to the south, and I think Director McGregor
My
takes
whole
up.
area.
Yeah, it got redistricted.
Any other items for discussion? I'm hearing none. All those in favor of appointing Dan Mullally as the interim director for Area 5, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. So, and you have someone coming in for the
Yeah, Peggy Napoli was supposed to come in. I just saw her at lunch, so I'm surprised.
Mhm.
And it is possible she forgot. What I would suggest is we could continue with the meeting and move that, and I'll try to get a hold of somebody.
Okay.
My wife is a notary also, and if nobody would object, I could have her do it, but she thought it might be somewhat of a conflict to have her do it.
Yeah.
No conflict.
No.
No.
Okay,
You went to the wing that much?
yeah.
So,
Okay.
so at this time, and if you're right, Director-elect Mullally, until you're sworn in, are you okay with not voting in measures?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And then we'll slide that in.
I'm sorry, I just dialed the wrong number.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. The board can't take any official action on any item that is not on the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, move to approve by Director McGregor,
Second.
seconded by Director Young. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. Okay, it looks like the agenda is approved for today. Okay, the next item is conflict of interest disclosure. If any board member has a conflict of interest to any of the items on the agenda, this is the time to make that known.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McGregor.
it's just an informational item, but I would have a conflict on item 15 since I do live in Black Cap.
Okay. Okay, anyone else?
Are you there? Well, Peggy didn't show up for the notary. Can you come down?
Okay, with that, then the next item on the agenda is item 6, approval of the minutes from the March 11th meeting.
Thank you.
I would move to approve.
Okay, Mark, Director Klein moves to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Roy. Open for discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
did you get my email about the name spelling? Okay.
Okay, discussion from the approval of the minutes. Motion by Klein, seconded by Boshi, to approve the minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Bender
Oh,
and Jamie.
Okay,
Sorry.
the next,
From the signage.
Item is number 7, is the treasurer's report, and that would be to Director Coe. Or would you like to hold off and get Dan sworn in? It's up to you, or if you'd like to do the treasurer's report.
Well, it's pretty, just informative, so
Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna do any voting on it.
Okay.
So, I guess we gotta approve it.
Yeah.
But I guess, the
Never mind,
treasurer's
Peggy's
report
here.
for the ledger, portion of it is on page 8 of our packet. And I think there's only a couple of things to note, other than what you can see there. Number one, it's still in the same format as we've had it in for a number of years. We're in transition. It'll probably most likely be in a different format, coming out of QuickBooks, at our next meeting in July, but it is what it is now, which is kind of what we've been doing for a number of years. We have not begun to receive our property tax levies from 2024 yet, or 2025 yet. County hasn't begun to process those yet, so you'll note on that top line, we only have a minor amount of property tax so far been received in 2025. That's just kind of straggler amounts. We'll be receiving some significant more payments here as those taxes are processed, which were due on April 30th. The other notable item is down there in the kind of the bright orange. There's a red entry there, $143,585.25. That was a CD that matured. It's been rolled into our Raymond James savings account now, paying 4.15% interest. So that's that's basically the three things that I wanted to mention on the ledger report. On the projects report, I think there's just a couple things to draw your attention to there, other than if you've gone through and have any particular questions. There's 4 items that are identified in green, and those are continuing projects that were extended on a no-cost extension in December of 2024 until I think December of 2025, if I remember correctly. And then down at the far right-hand corner, there's another entry in red, and those that is our committed funds based on the items that are in that far right column, which include our larger contract with the with Bar Engineering and the Bureau of Reclamation for the Deerfield Pactola study, the stream gauge stuff that we have ongoing, a committed amount of money for the 319 grant, and that we'll be discussing that later on. It's in process. And then that $125,000 we've been carrying for golly, quite a number of years now. I forget. But it's been a while. It's for the Green Valley Sanitary District Construction Project. So even though over on our ledger report it shows that we've got a lot of money, we have all but about $200,000 of it committed to projects. So that would be the extent of my report, unless somebody has a particular question I can try and answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Maybe Dan would be better to answer this, but are we still contemplating work at LaCroix Links that would use up that 1,800?
Absolutely.
Or that's still ongoing?
Right, there's still some work to do, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add that those committed funds could be over several years, so that's not committed for this fiscal year necessarily.
That's a good point. One specific example is the $133,000 for the 319 is a commitment over a 3-year time frame that does not start until some number of months from now. We don't know it. On paper, it was supposed to start around August 1, but anyhow, there's, that's certainly spread over at least 3 years.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
when do we expect to get tax levies? I mean, this is my first year, so.
Well, taxes, are due on a semi-annual basis.
Right.
So April 30th and October 30th. So we should be starting to receive, kind of close to a half of our amount after the April 30th tax receipts are processed by the county. And then we get these kind of, incremental little payments, but there are usually two large ones based
Right.
on those two tax payments, for people that pay essentially twice a year. And then there's a lot of stragglers that kind of come in, like it shows there's $28,620.12 that we've received in 2025 so far. That's just from, I think, delayed payments that come in, and then the county processes them and sends them our way.
Okay.
So, it's more than likely, I'm sure that at our next meeting in July, that property tax received levy for 2025 will be significantly higher, because we'll have seen those April receipts come in.
Okay.
Okay. Approval of the treasurer's report.
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Director Driscoll. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by McGregor. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the treasurer's report, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, or all those opposed, sorry, it's the second time I've done that today. Same sign.
That's how much money we got.
Okay. Treasurer's report is approved. Okay. Do we want to take a quick break to get Dan sworn in as we move in, since it was item 3 and we kind of have been moving a little bit quicker today than normal? So we're going to do a quick 5-minute break and then allow Dan to be sworn in. So.
Okay. Peggy was nice enough to come down on her own time here.
He's our egg man, I can't tell him.
You don't want to mess with
You know what
that.
eggs
egg,
are?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Chicken.
Not today.
Nope.
Oops.
He told me he had his ID.
I do.
Make sure it's him.
Check that photo. Where's all that money that was in?
Kind of slowly taking it out.
Just to be official.
Okay, and it's official.
Okay, so I
Read
signed
this?
here. Yep,
Read.
I've read that and written
Okay.
it. So.
Football. That's okay.
Oh. So read it out loud?
Yes, read it out loud. You are taking an
I, Dan
official-
Mullally of Director Area 5, having been elected as a member of the Board of Directors of the West Dakota Water Development District, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of South Dakota. I will faithfully and impartially and to the best of my ability perform all the duties of my said office of the Board of Directors of West Dakota Water Development District, Director Area 5, and render a true account of all money, credits, accounts, and property of any kind that shall come into my hands as such officer, and pay over and deliver the same according to the law. Dan Mullally. Usually I use my coffee cup as the seal.
Yeah.
Brown ring. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I gotta make a little left so if they need to make copies, my seal will show up. So
Okay.
I I don't have the little stamps, I have the old school one. There you go, you are officially sworn in.
Good,
Now
thank
go to
you.
work.
Better ask for that egg discount.
Oh, no, I never do that. I do not do- All right. Have
Thanks,
fun.
Peggy.
You bet.
Okay, so we will resume the meeting once Larry is back into position. Don't wanna
Oh, I
get
actually better get my purse.
too soon. So the next item is item 8, information, treasury surety bond as per South Dakota Codified Law 46A-3B-11, acquired with Western Surety Company. And that looks like, that's you again, Director Coe.
Okay, on page 11 and 12 of our packet, you'll see the documentation for that surety bond that we approved at our last meeting. So I think page 11 is actually the bond, and page 12 is the named individual, that's me as treasurer. So I'm now bonded for $100,000 with our annual premium of $375. And that brings us up to snuff with SDCL 46A 3B11. So it's a done deal, it's official.
Good job.
Okay. Moving forward, item 9 is approval for renewing westdakotawater.com domain name. It expires on June 25th of 2025. Right now, talking to our admin, we're looking to renewing it for 9 years at the rate of $13.19 a year. Total expenditure would be $118.71. So we can keep our internet domain, and we don't have to pick out a different one or somebody changing it to something else in June. We are looking for a motion to approve the expenditure of $118.71 to keep our domain name.
So
Why
moved.
9 years?
What?
Why 9 years?
I have an addition.
Okay.
Does that go to discussion or after you do this?
I'll move approval.
Move approval by McGregor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Coe.
No, that's my question, why 9 years?
You said you had an addition, Larry. Wasn't it a cheaper price over time?
Yeah, like 2 cents a year less if you pay in advance. I mean, it was virtually nothing. However, as you see, I contacted Tout, who we run our website through, and they had not responded back to me by the time of our executive meeting. In fact, I just heard from them a couple of days ago. And they are moving everybody to a new company called Hoover, how you say it, that they say is more reliable, progressive, and GKG has just not been progressing, whatever that means in terms of domains. So he said that they are moving all of their clients over to Hoover as soon as their domains come up. And so that's what they're suggesting, and it is $25 a year, and you can pay years in advance as well. So I don't know what the difference is. It's the name you type in on a browser to search our organization. So I don't know if the $13.80 a year versus $25 a year is going to make any difference to the website. That doesn't seem very clear to me. But that was on their recommendation. That he says that he is transferring all of my clients away from GKG because they have neglected to evolve, with no explanation what that means.
So then the question comes, at least in my mind, is when this date hits, would he just bill us the 25 as switchover?
He will not transfer us over without approval. So I have to let him know yes or no. I'm assuming that we could just renew with GKG and everything would just continue on as is, and there would be no hiccup.
Well, we could renew with GKG for a year and do a little more research on what the issues are, correct?
We could do a year, yes.
Rather than going and committing to 9 years and having some
Yes.
issues with security or whatever might be the progressive thing.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Milano.
So, a question for Larry. Can we just go to the new company now instead of this intermediate step of GKG?
We could go directly to Hover, yes, if we wanted to. Now, he says, tout, we go through tout, the cost is $25 per year, and we can pay for several years in advance, locking in the price, which would indicate that they might have yearly increases. So the more we pay now, it's locked in. I looked at the Hover website, and they charge and they cover .com, .biz, all these different organizations, and there's a little variation in price, and the .com wasn't listed. Everything else was roughly around $18.90 a year. So I don't, but their .com wasn't listed. Ours is a .com. So kind of confusing. I couldn't get any resolution by looking at the website. So I was assuming either the .coms cost more, or he's charging a little bit of money to do the transfer.
Yeah, because we're not talking much money here.
Yeah.
We've gone through tout before, so I'd like to make a substitute motion that we authorize the admin to renew our domain name by whatever means he feels is appropriate.
There is a substitute motion made by Director Mullally.
Because things like this are almost just an admin routine thing anyway. Keep things running.
Do we need to put a cap on the amount of money authorized, or does that even matter with this?
Well, I trust your judgment, Mr. Settler, so that's why I left it open, but we could.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, seconded by Driscoll.
How progressive do you have to be to run a website registration?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good question. That's kind of what I was thinking. And I couldn't find any resolution looking at GKG website or Hover. So,
Yes.
So I'm not necessarily totally understanding, or I see a chat in here, but who is it that we are actually, that is recommending to us that we, so who, I mean, is it a person at Tout?
yes,
I mean,
Tracy Bernard.
and so basically they're handling people like us.
Yes.
Right, and so I mean, would it make sense, you haven't actually talked to them,
Just email.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it would seem that if they're suggesting that we change, there's probably a reason for it. Is that your impression?
That was what I expected, that there would be something clear, but I didn't see that when I looked at the websites.
Would it make sense to call and get straight from the horse's mouth? When the change would take place before our July meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good motion to leave it in the hands of admin.
Yes. And I'll
Yes,
add
correct.
that I've gone through this with Tracy Bernard in the past. It wasn't 9 years ago, so I'm not sure how that ties in, but we talked about it, and she made certain recommendations, and they worked.
Yeah.
So I think we're safe dealing with tout.
I will find out more.
Any other discussion from the board?
Just a random question, being new to the board, why are we a .com and not a .org?
I've always wondered that.
Or .gov even.
Dot, we could be a .gov, yeah.
But I honestly don't know, because in my time here, and Dan's time as admin are roughly about the same time, and never even thought why at that time. So, because we did an overhaul of the website when you came on with talent, and yeah, no, I don't know why
We could acquire both names, I suppose, if they're available. If we wanted the .gov, we would be qualified to hold that, since we're a government agency. But
It'd probably be more appropriate to have a gov if we can get it, and maybe it's even cheaper then. So maybe you can figure it out with the tout people and make us our best deal.
Okay?
any
so
other.
then,
Yes,
Mr. Coth, you were suggesting we get rid of the .com or just keep them both?
Well,
I don't know if we want to get rid of it. It's in a lot of our documents.
oh, okay, well,
We could start to move away from it, though.
Yeah, we could get both .com and .gov and start our new publications will all be .gov. And they both point to the same place.
Probably Tracy might have some recommendations there, but I don't know how that fits into my motion here.
Right. When is the last time any one of us has actually typed out an entire web address? You know, usually you search and you click it.
but looking at kind of using the phrasing best option for West Dakota, I would say that kind of gives him leeway to
Okay.
expand all possible options.
Yeah,
And
fair
then-
enough. I'm just saying it's in all our letterheads right now, and I don't know what it would take to maintain both of them. They'd have to point to the same place.
Usually it's a simple redirect, so.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that.
So the motion on the floor is substitute motion by Mullally, seconded by Driscoll, to allow the admin to select the best option for West Dakota with the domain name and for the domain name issue. Would that be a correct statement?
Sure.
I know
Yeah,
it's,
so
it's shorter.
we should add that onto there.
Mr. Chair, do we need to vote on the first motion and then the substitute?
Nope.
Or the substitute takes care of it?
Yeah, so if the substitute is, just for record, if the substitute is approval, then the first motion is killed because of the substitute motion. So right now, we'll have, the motion says allow admin to select the best option for West Dakota Water Development District and for domain name.
The .com and .gov.
Yep. If I'm hitting everything and then also the purchase of the domain. Does the proposal of the substitute motion agree with the wording, or would like
Well,
it?
I would say best options. I mean, it may make sense to keep them both, so it's not necessarily either one or the other is the way I understand our discussion here.
Yeah, I think we have to keep the .com. We don't want that to get pointed to somebody else.
Yeah.
If we can get the
Right, yeah.
.gov, I think that'd be good.
We don't want it to go to a porn site,
That's right.
give us a
Okay.
bad name.
So the substitute motion that we will be voting on is allow admin to select the best option for West Dakota and for .com, .gov domains and purchase of domains. All those in favor of the
So does that includes the vendor for purchase of domains, right? He'll select the vendor as well. So it's either GKG or,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way I intend the
so it's
motion.
domains and the vendors.
So he'll work with Tout to make that decision probably.
Okay. Just to read over it one more time, allow admin to select the best option for West Dakota Water Development District and for .com, .gov domains, vendor, and purchase of domains. All those in favor of the motion, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, item number 10, information, development of a rating system based on water quality impacts for future funding of erosion projects that West Dakota Water Development District are or will become involved with. And that is,
This, this probably rolls more into the erosion control committee, but I wanted to throw it out because, having been my third meeting here, I've seen a number of these erosion control projects come up. And there's really no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of like, okay, these guys want to do this project, and, good project, whatever. But what are our impacts? Are we contributing a lot to the stream? Where if you got a ranking system, if you got somebody that's sitting right on the stream, they should get a little higher ranking to obtain funding, because we really don't have unlimited amount of funding. So I think if these start moving forward, we've got the 319 project, and if we wind up getting more of these types of projects, we should have some type of a ranking system to sit there and say, yeah, this is a high priority one, this is a medium priority, and this is a low priority. And then we've got a setup where we can sit there and go, okay, we only got enough funding to do the high priority ones. I just wanted to throw it out for information. I know the 319 programs that I had worked on, they had a ranking system. My former work with NRCS, for all our contracts, were all ranked because of the limited amount of funding. So I'm sure the erosion control committee will have some discussion on it, but I wanted to throw it out to the whole board, just more for information, and maybe get some input that we could use on the erosion control committee.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. One of the first two things that we're gonna be tasked with when we do eventually get the 319 money is what the ANR and the EPA call protection plans. And so those are gonna be for 2 reaches of Rapid Creek, and we'll have to select vendors for that,
Sure.
And I think we'll be able to, task those vendors with helping us to develop, some methodology to, prioritize, the things that are gonna have the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak.
Yep.
The other thing that's out there, and you may or may not be aware of it, but it's been a couple years now, but the water board here, we spent nearly $50,000 with School of Mines and terrace site design. And it links in with the erosion deal. They did a watershed by watershed inventory of impervious areas with the idea that perhaps those places that they found that, I think they prioritized them maybe within those watersheds, where the most bang for the buck could be on coordinating with basically the stormwater, reduction. So that's something maybe to take a look at as well, and we want to be sure we provide that information to the whoever the vendor might be for these priority or these protection plans.
So, Director Bashi, would this include metrics for evaluating the effectiveness of this, or is this just
It would be
looking
like,
at, say, what's feeding the stream and
Right.
back it up and decide, well, it's this, this, and this that are,
It would be backing it up from the stream, you know, okay, what's the impact? You know, do we have erosion control project on the flat up on the north side of New Underwood versus somebody that's right on Rapid Creek? Well, you're probably gonna want the Rapid Creek one as your higher priority, so,
And a sediment yield reduction metric or something.
yep.
so have you seen the terracite
Don't have it.
thing? Okay.
That we need to figure out how to make that more available, because I think it's sort of lost in the fog. It's all based in GIS, and I don't know,
Pardon me?
I think we need to figure out how to make it more available.
I believe it's on the website.
Along with all the other reports that are on the website.
Well, last time I tried, I couldn't figure out how to make it work. Maybe it's just my computer, which sometimes happens. Or it's me.
Sorry, I mispronounced your name. I finally just realized that.
That's all right, I've been called worse.
Yes.
Probably several comments and maybe lend to a little more discussion. Certainly it'd be good subject matter for our committee, you know, that's where it fits. The statement that, you know, projects we've got to date are without rhyme nor reason, I don't think that's an accurate statement at all. We've had a total of 4, the first of which was with the School of Mines. It was basically a research project, the intent for them to help us evaluate some methods, you know, and what, you know, they were gonna look at different methods. Turns out it wasn't particularly informative, but, you know, to me there was, you know, very much a logic to doing that. Pretty much of the 4 that we've got, the one out at Raider Park, you wouldn't necessarily call that a demonstration project, but the other 2, the one at LaCroix Links and then Star Village, very much, whether you call them demonstration or pilot, you know, we're trying to figure out, well, what are we getting into? A main driver for LaCroix is that it was with the City Parks Department, you know, from a starting point, you know, discussions, you know, many of the discussions in developing these were with former Director and Chairman Bierke. You know, we sort of talked about, well, what things could make sense, and, you know, we thought, well, it'd really be good to work with someone like the Parks Department, and we'd talked with them, and they said, well, you know, we could do this at LaCroix, and it seemed to be a pretty good fit. The Star Village, I don't know that I necessarily recall the main driver, other than I can't think of anywhere where we have a bigger need than there. Seemed like a pretty good starting point. So I guess, to me, that having been said, there are, you know, many factors besides just the water quality input that can drive it. In the case of Raider Park, you know, how that came about is the ringleader on that project, Tom Keck is his name. You know, they were developing it as, you know, primarily started out as cross-country hiking trails or running trails and hiking trails also, but, you know, Keck was kind of an old, long-time acquaintance of Bierke, and however they came to talk about it, you know, I'm sure Bierke said, well, you know, maybe you want to look at some erosion control there. And so, as it turns out, that's opportunistic. You know, they're interested in working with us, and you know, I'm certainly not inclined to send them away. It's not by any means the most severe erosion problem, you know, in the area. I think it's a very good project for us. Beyond that, one of the many things we can consider in discussing at the committee level, they haven't exactly been beating our door down to come in and say, well, we need help with erosion. The reality is that you know, the bigger driver is I'm kind of out there looking for what might be something that fits. And, you know, we can talk more about it at a later date, you know. There's a lot of factors there. I think once we get to 319, you know, I think there probably will be a likelihood that we might be asked to have some sort of a, you know, prioritization mechanism. I guess we've got a lot to learn about that, and so you know, I think that it's, you know, I guess bottom line, a few comments there. I think it is a good topic for our committee, and you know, one that we can basically begin to explore here in the months to come.
Any other comments on the informational item? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to informational item number 11. The Erosion Control Committee to review ongoing process for funding approval and potential incorporation of current projects in the upcoming 319 grant. It looks like Director Driscoll.
Well, I guess I'll have to admit I'm at a little bit of a loss here. I had submitted an agenda item for basically an update on our ongoing erosion control projects, and you know, it's not on the agenda, and this item is, and I really don't know what it is I'm supposed to address, I guess. So I am at a loss.
My apologies. I took it as of your update, and I think we got a little wordy on that, and that one's on me. That one's my fault. So if you would like to give your update for that you were going to give on the progress, we can do that. And I think I just overtyped the wording. So that was a loss in translation on me.
Well, I do have a brief update, and I guess I wasn't sure if I mean, the wording on it is entirely different, and it really does allude to, well, how do we expect our current projects to fit into the 319 project? And I certainly, you know, we do have a bit of an update on the whole 319 process. So it sounds like if we want to first start with the update on erosion control to date and then just evolve into a discussion on this, that would be fine by me.
Okay.
So Larry, could you pull up the PowerPoint that I had provided you? So what it will start out with is Raider Park. That is as of today's date. You know, we've got funding on the books. You know, this one, there's no real planned end date. Some of what happens, there's a number of areas yet that need work there. We've basically had two over the course of, you know, since there's some new directors since we started this project several years ago, kind of two main thrust activities. The first of which we'd actually built two small retention dams, you know, stormwater mitigation facilities to address runoff from two different parking lots, which was contributing to erosion in the area. So that got done as part of, you know, our first endeavor, and then also involved you know, a fair amount of topsoiling of some erosive areas, and you know, pretty successful. Our next endeavor, and part of what goes on at Raider Park, just some background. So it used to be kind of a popular off-roading area, and there's quite a few old trails in there, rutted up and whatnot, and they'd actually done quite a job. A lot of that ended up being smoothed. I think National Guard had helped them and converted to both cross-country trails and then hiking trails. A lot of people that use that area. See them all the time out walking dogs and whatnot. So the next endeavor was really just topsoiling operation on, basically one of these roads, and put down seed and blanket, and that was nice. So this deal is actually just, I didn't get much lead time on it, but they contacted me middle of last week and said, well, they were wanting to do, they had a couple of teachers that wanted to do a CCC reenactment project, and they wanted to do some erosion control, and they wanted those students to go out there and move dirt by hand, just like it was CCC. And so, as it turns out, that's what they did this morning. They had this pile of waste red dirt that RCS Construction had hauled in and parked. You can see there's some bare gypsum there, and they wanted to put down some base material. And then there's a pile of topsoil next to the church on the northwest corner of Raider Park, which is north of the main Stevens campus. So you can see that red dirt, and then up top you can see then the topsoil. So as it turned out, yesterday, basically on Friday, I was off fishing. I got returned home and tried to scramble to rent a 3/4 ton vehicle that would carry a dump trailer, into which I loaded the Bobcat that belongs to the Wagers, who are the former owners of the Star Village property, which is now owned by the city of Rapid City. And these generous souls allow me the use of that Bobcat continued on at Star Village and at Raider Park. You know, we'd used it on at least one of our other endeavors. So yesterday I had the joy of it's got a fan, no air conditioner. Had a volunteer that showed up and helped drive the dump trailer, and we moved. There was a lot of logistics to get all this stuff ahead of time. I wished I'd had lead time, and if I've got a guy who I can rent kind of a unit from, he was out of town, so it didn't work out that way. Maybe I could have got twice as much done. But we managed to get 6 loads of good dirt in there, and I just swung by this morning. I guess we can go to the next slide. I don't even remember what's there. So that's just a different view of it. There's the dirt pile in the foreground. It's kind of partially covering red shale erosion area, but I guess to me it was kind of a pain to go through all this. But if you've got a bunch of volunteers that are wanting to go out there and do something like this, I guess I'm going to do what I can to stick with them. So, any questions on Raider Park? Background, just...
Dan, I've got just a couple of quick comments about it. So we live down on Peyton Court. So there's a drainage on the north side of this project that runs east-west. And when we get high water events, that'll run all the way down and then underneath Susan and then into Lime Creek.
Yep.
And so that work is important for the fishery to keep all of that garbage out of the creek down there. Oh, the other comment I wanted to make is I've been in conversations, I'm not directly a part of it, but there's talk of using some of this land at Raider Park for planting native plants, and then ultimately connecting a bike trail from Raider Park through Black Hills Works across the street, and then it'll end up down in Mary Hall Park.
Yeah, there's a planned trail in there, I know, and
So it's getting a lot of use.
there's a lot of use there. It's very visible. It's good publicity for us. And Larry, did you get a bill from Melbourne Seeds for
Just what
See-
you sent this morning, I saw that email.
Okay, so they'll email it to you directly, but, you know, what they prefer to use for seed is basically, kind of a wild seed mix, and seeds that are primarily native to this area, that like to get away from, you know, the predominant grass in a lot of these places is brome, and it's smooth brome. It's not I guess I've used quite a bit of it for erosion control because they tell me it sends out rhizomes and that it kind of spreads itself better than some of the others. It's got some downsides, and then Roy had suggested, is it prairie
sandreed,
and
big
another.
blue stem, little blue stem, western wheat.
So,
The problem you got with smooth brome, it sends out rhizomes, but they're just at the surface. You don't have that deep root system that you get with more of the native plants to help hold that stuff in place.
so actually little blue stem is actually a third there, but that is in that mix. And, you know, well, I'll mention one other. Sweet clover's one that I like. I see Roy shaking his head. It grows, but okay. So let's move on to Star Village. Back in March, it's kind of hard to really see this, but most of you, well, some of you are familiar. Some of you have seen it. The area that we had topsoiled, there's about 1/3 of an acre that we topsoiled using dredged sediment from Canyon Lake there in our first year of endeavors there, and there's a steep head cut above that, similar to pretty much everywhere, and we've got them pretty well stabilized, but this is one of the nastiest ones, and actually there's a pile of dirt up top there that's been there covered with grass, and some years ago I tapped into it a little bit, and it's workable enough dirt, and so I decided of the things that we could do that we could be chipping away at, and my intent was to use the Ignite labor force. The day they were supposed to, well, they were there, they were down below. They got the wrong directions to where they're supposed to show up at. So they showed up top, and they said, well, it turns out the top part is owned by Zadik and the Zadik Property Management. Zadik and the city have been involved in there's a lot of things going on. I don't know the details, but law enforcement stuff, and there's a concern on the part of basically Pennington County and the city that run the Ignite program that there might be litigation from Zadik, and they said, so because of that, we cannot stage, you know, on the Zadik property and cross it. So I'm bringing the dirt down from above, and they said, sorry, but we can't help. I says, oh, so I managed to find one volunteer per day, and what we did was, you know, shoveled away. There's a part of the steep lip on the head cut, and then using the cargo sleds that aren't shown, you know, load them up and slide them down the hill and dump them there. And the next slide, I think, is going to show there's grass growing there. We did that back in March. We've got a pretty good stand coming in, and it's looking pretty promising. So then the next slide, this shows there's been a little pathway coming down through that area. It's just kind of been a long-term, almost a sidewalk, and so as part of what we did, that was a good thing to hit. And then the next slide, where that path came on down onto the area we had patched, you know, it was getting blown out by the foot traffic. And so that's the heaviest blanket we can get now, and you can see the grass is coming in really nice, and it's hard to see, but what looks on the sides there, kind of bearish stuff, you know, we spread more dirt there, but without putting blanket down, because it was patchy, and it's making a pretty nice stand. And if we get some rain this week, it might do pretty good. And part of the problem, having done this, we hauled the dirt in on a trailer, 2 scoops at a time from the Bobcat, on a trailer behind Bierke's 4-wheeler. And so it got spread about an inch deep, As it turns out, that's enough, but it needed a little help, so gaining there. Next slide is going to take us to LaCroix. So that's what it looked like in 2021. It was experimental. This is somewhat short of total blowout. You can see a little bit of patchy vegetation there, and we just kind of experimented. We said, let's put in some wattles there, and since there's some newcomers here, what those wattles are, instead of being made with wood chips, Dion Lowe, who was the wattle guy at that time, formerly the stormwater engineer for City of Rapid City, and then he spent quite a bit of time just in the business. He wrote mostly, construction, basically post-construction sort of work. But he said, one thing that you could do, he dabbled with it. He called them a grow wattle. You'd take this sediment from Canyon Lake. We actually mixed it with compost and then laced it with fertilizer and seed, and the stuff will grow right up out of there. Well, it's at least 3 times the density of your standard wattles, and it takes like 4 people to carry in a 20-footer. It didn't grow well enough to justify it, but we just experimented, and we put in 4 or 5 rows clear across the top there. So the next slide, just another view. You get a kind of a bigger area and see it's patchy vegetation. We thought, well, let's just see if it grows in here. The next slide. So this was 2023, and this stand of sweet clover showed up there. And I mean, this is pretty nasty growing conditions, but anything that grows there, I'm in favor of it. So I recently bought a bag of sweet clover and throw it in with all my seed mixes. So the next slide, that was today. And so last fall, we spent a group of volunteers. We'd have about 4 or 5 volunteers per day if we were lucky, and we spent 3 days in there spreading leaves, and then I'd seeded it after the fact. And this year the conditions were right. Every year, any time I put the leaves down, I always seed it. This year it's taken off, so there's actually a stand of grass coming in, and this is probably the nicest looking, but various other places there's grass coming up where it's not been before. The next slide, if you can see these little yellow flowers, Larry can see them. I don't know about anyone else, but there's a lot of native vegetation coming in, and in places where there just wasn't hardly anything before. And what's happening, instead of everything washing through these, we installed wattles on the entirety of that hill, like 2022 or whatever, and it's working. So the next slide is basically the same area, maybe a little better view. And is that the last slide? Yep. So a lot of these things is doing pretty nice this year. So I guess that's my update. I guess I forgot to ask if anyone wanted any questions or discussion on Star Village, but we can open it up here quick like.
Director Driscoll, on LaCroix, you said sweet clover came up by itself?
Yeah, it came up, and basically only in the area above the wattles that we had put in. And I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but farther down the slope, we really weren't seeing it. So.
Okay. Well, I like sweet clover because I'm a beekeeper. During one of the sweet clover blooms, I got 900 pounds of honey that year. So I was wondering if that was intentional, or. And then you said there was grass that came in too.
Well, this year it came into a lot of the areas where we had put the leaves in last fall. So it's, I've seeded a lot of areas before and hadn't really done much. I don't know if conditions are just right, but it's coming in nicely.
Very good.
Has our access to Star Village been terminated on the litigations going on?
There was possible litigation, and no, it doesn't affect us at all. They've actually got, they've been through a number of local managers, and I recently met the one that's there 6 months or so ago, and he's very solid. And I mentioned this issue to him. I said, do we have any issues? And he said, no, you guys we like what you're doing. You know, you guys are welcome to continue working in that
You
fashion.
might talk, I believe the litigation has commenced.
Well, it could be.
Do you have anything, Director Phelps?
Well, I think it's all good until it's not. I'll say that much. We had extensive discussion at our executive board meeting, an hour, maybe an hour and a half plus on these projects, and the mechanism that they've been, the mechanisms that we've used to get them accomplished. In December, we were going to zero these projects out and then restart them as needed, with new agreements, new commitments, a new review of cost share, a review of how we were going to get things done, because we are not construction people. We are not prepared for that. We don't have volunteer waiver forms, even if they are only paper. We're not insured for heavy equipment or physical damage to volunteers. Those agreements were extended for the purposes of doing new agreements, no-cost agreements. Now it appears that we don't have any new agreements, even though we're 5 or 6 months down the line. And we are continuing along the same methodology and pathway that we started with, where I say again, it's all good until it's not. We had one rollover with or tip over with the borrowed four-wheeler. We have been lucky that we haven't had some other incident with the mechanized equipment and volunteers, or volunteers who have not damaged themselves either by carrying things that are too heavy, pounding stakes where they're not really sure what they're doing when they're on a 20% slope, or we've got older individuals who are being tasked with pulling sleds of dirt or leaves up and down steep slopes. I'm pretty concerned that if we continue along this pathway, the water district is going to be the target of some kind of litigation based on some damage. And that's why the letter was constructed that went to the Erosion Control Committee, specifically targeting, the mechanisms that we're going to get these things done. We are not a construction outfit. We have the mechanism and means to help people get things done if they come in. They need to be responsible for their properties. None of these are our properties. And I don't know how we can continue to do these things just carte blanche, as we've done for the last couple of years, where we've just been damn lucky.
So what would the consequences be, this is for anybody, of a volunteer getting injured? Does our insurance cover that at all?
We have vehicle insurance. Vehicle meaning passenger vehicle. Maybe a rental pickup truck, but I don't think our insurance, and Larry can speak to that, I think he inquired. We don't have anything that relates to personal injury. Nor do we probably have anything, especially with a borrowed machine. As Mr. Driscoll has indicated, we have a borrowed Bobcat on a rented dump trailer. We're very exposed.
Surely we have directors and officers insurance.
No.
This board does not have D&O?
We have
we do.
assurance. We have assurance with a state-sponsored entity that gives us some protection for vehicles. But that's about it. We are not insured.
We are not a construction outfit. We've been damn lucky.
But the construction side apart,
We have coverage with assurance, which is something different than insurance, but we do have coverage for O&M.
And then I thought, Larry, you were gonna check on volunteer insurance and that kind of thing, or assurance with that group.
The assurance only covers vehicles up to 75,000. And there is no coverage for personal injury, personal anything. And I was told that goes directly to workman's comp, which I don't think we have workman's comp.
No. No, that was the point of that no-cost extension for these agreements, to figure out where we were going in the future. And today's update gives us a pretty good, I think, point of reference on what we're up against in terms of exposure.
Any other comments on the agenda item?
I think it's a fair enough point that, you know, we need to be looking at proper liability coverage to cover any liabilities that, you know, could come into play. That's, you know, certainly would be good logic to say that we should not have involvement, you know, in these sort of efforts and, you know, seeking volunteers and the like. You know, we're all entitled to our own opinion, and I respect anybody that's their opinion. My opinion is the converse, that, you know, this is exactly the sort of work that we should be doing.
Any other comments on the informational item?
Is this something that we can address in the agreements we have with these entities, that they carry the insurance on these projects if we partner with them as a board, or is that inadequate?
That was the point of the no-cost extension, is to do new agreements, so that we could have assurances that we had commitments of time and labor, we maybe reviewed cost shares, we reviewed responsibilities, you know, all of those things. That was the intent 6 months ago, but we haven't done that.
I think that is entirely misstated. The no-cost extensions, you said we were going to shut these projects down, zero them out. You had made a motion. You know, I came in with a motion to basically extend them for 2 years, and you came in with a substitute motion to close them out. I came in with another substitute motion, instead of a 2-year extension, to do a 1-year extension. The purpose of that extension was to basically give us a year to basically begin progressing into the 319 end of things. There was no discussion of liabilities and this and that. You know, that's been totally misrepresented.
I'll disagree with that.
Excuse me, I've got the floor, as I believe. You know, I think anybody that wants to go back to the audio on that would be welcome to. I think, you know, of course, those who are on the executive committee and erosion control committee are aware that I had provided an updated plan then. 4-Star Village is basically the one. There were also 2 new proposals, but that is an update that would carry us through to the end of 2025 is what's stated. And, you know, that is entirely the intent to, and it's no longer a no-cost extension. It was adding additional funds, and the executive committee, you know, made the decision to pull that off of the agenda. You know, I think we'll probably be looking at some changes in bylaws here. I had made, you know, some time back when we were doing a couple things with bylaws, I had basically suggested, and it was approved, a change in the bylaws that even allowed the existence of the executive committee. You know, there was no mechanism other than it had been our habit to do that. And so, you know, it stated that the committee would have the authority to set the agenda. Well, I guess that's become to decide what should or shouldn't be on there. Another thing we need to look at, so our practice has been that the items for an agenda need to be submitted by a director. Somebody can't just come off the streets and say, well, I want an agenda item. It has to be submitted through a director. That is not formalized in our bylaws. It needs to be. At the beginning of every meeting, we vote to approve an agenda item, or the agenda, so items can be added, although that seldom happens. Items can be deleted at the vote of a board. So I guess in my opinion, the executive committee has not been given the authority to carte blanche. In this case, there were, as the erosion control committee is aware, there was a proposal for Cornerstone Mission, one with the School of Mines, and then the updated plan for the Star Village area with Zadiq and the Parks Department. To me, it could be suggested that maybe we should hold off on this until we decide some things, and I guess I'm kind of taking it in that light. I guess, for it to be on hold for another couple of weeks, that's all fine and well, but, I think that we need to be specific that the executive committee might suggest to a director that they modify an agenda item, or perhaps consider retracting it, but, in my opinion, the executive committee is entirely overstating or overreaching what had been the intent of formalizing their existence and allowing them to set the agenda. So with that, I'll close my comments for now.
I'm not gonna go into a long detailed discussion, but when we did our work back in December, it was the recommendation of the executive committee to zero those projects out and start with new agreements, because we weren't sure that those agreements really covered what was going to be a good relationship between, for example, the City Parks Department and West Dakota, working on city parklands. We were doing the work, we were spending the money, and they were providing essentially very minimal inputs. So the intent was to redo those agreements. It really has become more apparent as we've examined how we do these projects that we are exposed as a board. And that's the reason that we, as an executive committee, have made the decisions in recent months to not consider some of these projects where we are exposed and we have no agreements. The other part of it is that we have some of these projects being done on very steep slopes. They're all experimental. And so if we're gonna really do things on steep slopes, we need engineered plans for slope stability. Some of our directors have lots of experience in this, but I would suggest that anything over 20% slope is very steep. And we're working on very steep slopes in many cases, which need engineering, which need water travel direction, a lot of different components to come into play that we have not included in any of our projects. So we need engineering help. And then we need to figure out how to do them without exposing ourselves or doing the projects necessarily under the guise of one individual primarily.
Any other items for this informational item?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that the executive committee be directed to investigate more extensive liability coverage for the district and report back to the board at our August meeting.
Okay. For the August meeting, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
which is our budget meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Second.
Point of order, this is an informational item. We're not able to vote on it. I think this can be done simply. I don't think a vote is needed to do what's being talked about.
Okay. So you're suggesting that the executive committee just take upon what Mr. Director McGregor had stated as something to do as a committee to report out for August. Is that what you were stating?
Then I think our next meeting will be July. You know, anyhow, it seems fair enough, we really need to explore these avenues. I don't think we need to vote.
Mr. Chairman, given the nature of the conversation, I'd like to do this by motion,
Okay.
rather than leaving it up to the executive committee to take on the burden on its own.
Okay. As the chair, I will take the motion. So the motion is to suggest the executive board to look at the liability
No, I would direct the executive board.
directive.
The board of directors directing the executive board to investigate insurance, expanded liability insurance coverage for the district.
Second by Young.
Seconded by, no,
Yeah. Is the motion presented what you would like, or does it need
Yes.
to be changed? Okay. So there is a motion by Director McGregor that the executive board to explore the expanded liability insurance for the district, seconded by Young. All those in favor of the motion?
Discussion on
Oh,
this?
discussion, sorry. Yes.
Okay,
Director
I
Mullen.
think that's an important detail, so I agree with it. It may help to talk to Jay Gilbertson with East Dakota and see what they do.
And so are we just looking at liability then, or are we going to look at any insurance that, whether it's insurance or assurance that we're needing here? And I don't know if there's any coverage from state or any other affiliated government agency. I just want to make sure we're
I'm
not
not sure
limiting
that-
the scope.
This has come up before, but I can't remember it. It was Jerry, guy from Spearfish that did our insurance, Jerry Kamak or something. I don't know if he's still around.
Any other discussion on the
Well, so
motion?
we're saying liability insurance, are we talking about liability insurance for equipment, volunteers, board?
Yeah, exactly.
I would leave that up to the executive committee to
Just gotta look what
define the
scope
scope of liability we should cover based on our discussions.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Yes.
I think we need to look at insurance that's broad enough to cover any needs associated with this kind of work. I don't think we want to restrict it. I think we want to, make sure we can find coverage that will meet our needs.
Any other discussion on the motion?
well, I'm sorry, I guess I typed in, you said the expanded scope of liability, so I put that in, is that what you intended?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, not hearing any discussion, so the motion on the floor is, this board directs the executive board to explore expanded scope of liability insurance for the district. All those in favor of the motion, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Move to item 12. Oh,
I don't think we've finished this yet. I thought the intent was then to move into, kind of touching on the upcoming 319 process per the wording of the agenda item.
you are correct on that. Do you want to explain what we've had in communication, or would you like me to?
I can go ahead. So, we were notified by Chris Dozark a month or so ago that the funding for our 319 project has been basically approved because of congressional funding. Congress actually passed what seemed to have been called a continuing resolution, but through the end of the year, I think the bottom line is that the funding levels were similar to last year's, where the continuing part comes in. So the bottom line is that funding has been approved by Congress. The next step is for Chris has to put together some paperwork that eventually will come to us to begin the process for the money to move to us. So our intent would be, the arrangements are that once the paperwork is ready to go out the door, that our 319 committee will try to have a call with Chris to basically better understand what our next steps are. But I guess my general impression, right or wrong, is that this is probably federal fiscal 2025 funding that probably will be available for the 3-year lifespan that has been proposed. So is that kind of consistent with everyone else on the 319 committee?
I would agree with that statement. Ron, do you agree with the statement from the correspondence that we had received?
Yeah, he has to apply for the money before we sign a contract, sometime in the next 3 months.
So that end of it, the wording here for funding approval and potential incorporation of current projects into the upcoming. So I guess I can provide my perspective on it. The reason this came onto the radar of the DANR, the 319 program, was, they'd seen a presentation I'd done at East Dakota Hydrology Conference some time ago, and they showed up at a special meeting we had, and they said, we think this would qualify for 319, and we'd be interested in putting together a project with you guys. And so the wheels turned, and we are where we are. In my opinion, the Star Village project is our biggest project. It's going to take quite a bit of funding to get it done. That's definitely one that I see weaving into it, and actually it is specifically stated as a planned component of our plan that we submitted, that there would be a design plan done for Star Village, which would basically allow estimating costs and whatnot. The funding from 319 stops short of any implementation. Our current packet, to refresh people, includes watershed protection plans, which would probably be done by, we're probably going to need to be getting out an RFP for these things. We'll need help with that for one reach of Rapid Creek from Pactola down to above Canyon Lake, and then the second reach from above Canyon Lake, basically probably somewhere just a little downstream from where we are here. I don't know exactly where it cuts off. Also included then is a design plan for the Star Village work, and one for a stream restoration effort in the Pactola Basin, as it's called, just downstream from Pactola. Also included are relatively minor components for riparian buffer initiative and cover crops that would occur, primarily in what are referred to. There's an upstream reach above Pactola is Reach 1. It's 2 and 3 that take us to about where we are here, and then there are reaches 4 and 5 further downstream and predominantly agricultural, and that's where those things would take place. So those would be the only 2 implementation components that would take place, during the next 3 years. So with that as background, what I've been working on at Star Village is basically just continuing to do a lot of what's been done to date is to keep the erosion scar from expanding to actually, we've been shrinking it a certain amount. There's a number of areas of partial vegetation. We've been trying to keep them from totally blowing out. So a lot of the method to the madness is that these efforts are going to, greatly reduce the overall cost of doing things. Like where I'd shown this head cut that we've been working on, the cost of stabilizing that the way we've been doing it is pennies on the dollar as opposed to, basically being done by contractors. So in the long run, we'll have saved a lot of money there, but it's certainly the right candidate for future 319. Looking at Raider Park and LaCroix, I personally see no reason to consider incorporating them in 319. We can do projects, they don't have to be part of 319. The cost of doing business will go up with 319. We'll have to be paying people to be reporting on our progress. Annual progress reports are required, and I think they kind of like to have quarterly. So my opinion would be, I don't know that Raider Park and LaCroix will necessarily be wrapped up by then. They may be, they may not. In the case of LaCroix, there's a couple bare areas we hope to topsoil yet, and there may be some maintenance in the future. If what we're doing with the leaves is successful, and I'm kind of optimistic, I'd be pretty certain that we'd have to patch in some more yard waste bags every fall. But I think they can be done, without 319. So I guess I'll pause there and open it up again.
I think the only thing I'd comment on is the timeline. When we get the funding, presumably sometime late this summer or early this fall, we then would be able to use those funds to solicit design help for Star Village and for that reach of Rapid Creek. Once we get those things completed, we then can apply prior to 3 years. We can apply the next funding year for money to build those projects. We don't have to wait 3 years. We can build those as soon as we have a design, and it sequences in with the way that the 319 money and projects are solicited. So usually that's in the fall. So optimistically, if we get money to design things this fall, we could be asking for money to build them, the next year, and then possibly build them the following year. So it isn't quick, but it's the way it works.
That information is accurate according to my understanding. We don't have to wait. I really don't know. My suspicion is that we're really going to want to have a watershed protection plan in place before we actually do the plan. It's not written up that way, but it seems like to have the watershed protection plan before doing design plans would have the horse in front of the cart, but they'll help guide us through that. One of the unknowns is whether or not there will be funding and how much in the future fiscal budgets. What they passed was continuing resolution this time. We'll wait and see. It's entirely possible the way things are going that 319 may not be funded as well in future years, and that's beyond our control.
You feel good on item 11, Dan?
If that's what the
Yep.
expectation was, I mean, It's totally open to me, whatever discussion the group wants.
Okay. Not hearing any other discussion, we'll move to item 12, water quality, quantity, and security by Director Young.
Larry, if you'd go to slide 3 to start, we're gonna make this brief. So this is part of a presentation that we've given before to a number of groups, and for us here today, I just wanted to bring everyone up to speed on some of the projects we're working on. So with the Black Hills Fly Fishers, the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish, State GF&P, Rocky Mountain Elk, National Wild Turkey, Pheasants Forever, Prairie Hills Audubon, I'm not sure who I'm forgetting. We've been doing a number of restoration projects, primarily in the northern hills on tributary streams to Rapid Creek, trying to keep water on the landscape longer. You're looking at an example of an incised creek bed. Historically, that bank would, or that stream would have simply flooded over its banks, helped the adjoining riparian area. When the water came down, it would flow back in. Go ahead and go to the, let's go to 5. This is Hops Creek, which right now is an absolute trickle of water in the northern hills. But with real beaver dams or beaver dam analogs, this is the type of water we could bring back to the landscape. And rather than historically water runs into Pactola, we get too much water, we flush it down Rapid Creek, down the Cheyenne River, and it's off the landscape. This way we could preserve water on the landscape longer. Next slide, please. This is an example of fire mitigation. You can see I had to ask one of my fire guys why it's so green and wet. It's because fire doesn't burn water. So he's brought the fire, the fuels aviation officer up to some of the work that we've done on Silver Creek, and the fuels aviation officer indicated that they could actually dip out of some of these ponds for firefighting efforts in the case of catastrophic wildfire. Number 7, that gives you an idea of where we're at. That's Silver Creek. It's just north of Rochford a little bit. Let's go to number 8. Again, we have a number of volunteers that have helped us out with these low-tech restoration efforts. This valley that you're looking at there is Greens Gulch. What we're doing is reconnecting historic beaver dams. We'll go to the next slide. You can see what some of that work looks like. Part of this was literally wet cow footprints running down this valley. We'll put in one of these beaver dam analogs, and note where those people are sitting in the slide to the left in the background. We'll have a slide coming up that's completely wet now. And that pond, where you can see my Labrador, that trickle of water became 4 feet deep. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. You can see now upper right where those people are standing. That's now wet, and the bottom left is the size of that pond. And when we started, it was literally 2 feet across. When we build these BDAs, we build them out of material on the site. The only exception is the posts that we drive in. And then we put what we call carrots, which are sedges, on top of the dam face in order to re-solidify it. But if you look at this slide, starting back here, that's the end of that historic beaver dam. It came all the way through here and then down across, and we're just simply reconnecting that historic dam to the water. All right, let's go to the next. Again, so you can see upper left, that's how wide that tributary stream was. And if you go to upper right, you can see the water that is behind it, and you can see it backing up Greens Gulch. These beaver dam analogs are important to the landscape for a number of reasons, but primarily storing water on a landscape. Great for wildlife, whether it's turkeys or ducks or elk. And we were up there a week ago, and there are thousands of northern spotted leopard frogs who had eggs that were dormant for God knows how long, and now they've hatched. And you can go up there, and it's a cacophony of frog sound. Next slide, please. This is a video, so if you toggle your mouse, you'll get a play. Time lapse of us putting one in. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so we don't have any beavers on the hills to speak of. The U.S. Forest Service and the state game fishing parks flew 1,000 miles of streams, including tributaries of Rapid Creek. They found in the Black Hills, including Wyoming, 16 beaver caches. In some parts of South Dakota, particularly east of here, beavers are not necessarily compatible with other land uses. In the Black Hills, they are essential. With those 1,000 miles of flight that the U.S. Forest Service and state GF&P did, they found 16 caches, 13 on the Black Hills. We may have 50 beavers right now on the landscape. Okay, so that is, we can go to the next slide, and that just shows the work that we're doing and how we're doing it. If you're on any social media and want to follow any of these efforts, on Instagram we're Trout Not Trash, and on Facebook we're Clean Up Rapid Creek. We do these with some frequency, and I'll keep the board appraised of that when it comes to items from directors. That's it.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I mean,
You want to go Driscoll, Mullally, and then Klein?
gotta get used to reasoning.
Some number of years ago, there were beaver dams up the wazoo on Whitetail Creek. Did they disappear, or are those part of the existing handful?
The model of forestry in the Black Hills for the last 20 years or so has been to grow ponderosa pine to sell. Beavers don't eat ponderosa. Beavers need aspen and they need willow. And so with less groceries, we've lost beavers.
Well, there were plenty of beaver food there then, so I don't know if somebody, a lot of times they get trapped out, is their thing.
There was a trapper who was working the hills last winter. He got exactly one beaver in the Black Hills.
Anyhow.
So
how do you decide where to place these beaver dam analogs, I think you called them?
So there's a couple of ways that we're doing it up in Greens Gulch and Silver Creek. The first is we're looking at where the existing beaver dams were. And you can see those as literally mounds going across a valley that have a cut in them. If you imagine a string of pearls, beavers are giant chicken McNuggets. And so if they're out of the water, they are easy prey for mountain lion or coyote or whatever. And so what beavers need are deep pools connected by streams and a deep pool. So the closer those pearls are on that string, the better the beavers do. And so the idea is eventually, once we have enough strings and pearls, when beavers come back, they'll have habitat, and then they can continue this work on their own.
Thank you.
So how many analogs have you built so far, and what's the cost per analog?
So Greens Gulch and Silver Creek, we've got just over 100 up there. The only cost is fuel for the post drivers and the posts themselves. and the posts were purchased by Nature Conservancy, State Game Fish and Parks, and U.S. Forest Service.
Any other questions from the board?
I will talk a little bit more about it as an informational item, or items from directors.
Okay. There are no other questions. We can move to item 13, an informational item, Earth Day summary of West Dakota Water Development sponsorship, and it looks like Director McGregor, you are tied to that one.
Yeah, I think we had a successful time at the Earth Day presence up that we had at Western Dakota Technical College this year. We were in a good and a bad location at the end of a corner that caught us a lot of, well, just about everybody that was visiting came by us at one time or another. I had many good conversations with people, and we gave away a lot of the old USGS, I don't know, what do you call those, big coffee
The
table
lay,
books?
the lay reader atlases, about 115 of them,
Okay.
a lot.
And we gave those out. The bad part about that is we didn't have a lot of room to display our posters, you know, up there. They were taped up on the wall behind us and behind the walkway up to the stage. In fact, I didn't even realize they were there at first until Dan came along to relieve me and pointed them out. So all things considered, I mean, we got a lot of good comments. I talked to a lot of people. I had nobody with any negative attitudes about anything we were doing, and when we explained it all. I think we ought to take a look at doing this again next year. The only caveat being is I'm told by people at Western Dakota that the School of Mines is probably going to take this over next year to be the sponsoring location and not Western Dakota Technical College. So we may want to take a harder look at it when that comes up next year. Dan, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'd like to thank you for helping staff the thing. That was a big help. Actually, our updated poster was very visible. Those were just erosion control posters that were kind of secondary. But beyond that, there were T-shirts came to us, and they didn't have any that were small enough for me. I requested like small, medium. We've got large and extra large, so there's 3 of them.
I've got one, and that's my fault. I turned in all the small and medium ones for bigger ones, because I figured most of this crowd wasn't going to be small, medium type.
We'll probably have enough T-shirts. You get to be my
Pass them
age.
on.
But I agree. I think it was a good experiment, and it's a totally different audience for whatever it's worth than what we're typically exposed to, and whether or not, I don't know. I don't. It's one of those intangibles that to me is totally worth $1,000 to be a sponsor.
Do you mind if I ask you guys a question? What type of people did you guys speak to? Was it more like parents? Was it older people? Was it kids? Or was it just a smattering of whoever was bored and walked by the booth? And
Whoever came by, we'd start to engage them. If they stopped to look at the books, I'd start to engage them. The population of the attendees, as I experienced, was mostly like late high school, college age, and then older people. And by older people, I mean our age and above.
There were a lot of people with kids. It's a wide mix of people.
I was there in the morning, and Dan was there in the afternoons.
There must have been a couple hundred people in that room above and beyond, the displayers at any given time. And I mean, there's a lot of people going through there.
I know as I've taken my kids to similar items, sometimes it's mostly parent heavy with children and they're running by and grabbing the free stuff, or sometimes it's more people interested in actually wanting to talk, so that's where
The morning hours didn't have any of that, really.
Oh, okay.
You didn't have any candy, huh?
We didn't. I mean, if we do it again, I think, something like that, or at least putting up maybe some sort of an issue upon which people could cast a vote for, something a little more to have them stop and engage, at the table. do you support the establishment of more beaver dams in the Black Hills, something like that?
There's many possibilities, one of which could be trying to team up with the Bennington Conservation District or DANR, like set up, somebody's got a rainfall simulator around, and, you know, rainfall runoff simulator, you know, stuff like that, you know, would certainly fit. So there's lots of possibilities if we wanna do more with it.
Cool. Thank you guys for working that, and very appreciative on that.
I enjoyed it, it was a good time.
Okay, item number 14, information, Pennington County Conservation District update on Rapid Creek Restoration Project. That is me. So I attempted to get the Pennington County Conservation District to kind of give us an update. They had scheduling conflicts, and I was working till about 4 p.m. yesterday to get someone to come. But just a general overview, we had back in 2022, did an agreement for restoration projects on Rapid Creek through their Rapid Creek Restoration grant. They had finally submitted a item for $7,500 for an invoice for a project that they had funded. We have paid that invoice and sent it over, but as we were reviewing the invoice and the item that was completed, we noticed also in that joint powers agreement that they were supposed to come and explain what they had been doing for the project within the agreement, and we had not seen them through talks. We found that they went through an administrator change, so the new administrator is coming on, and it just kind of fell by the wayside, but we are going to bring that up. But we did fund the $7,500 for the project, and we hope to have them at the July 8th meeting. I have a tentative agreement for them to explain what the project is in detail and what the project covers.
Sharon, Mac, do we know what it was? What the project was?
It was a stream crossing. And so when we had agreed back in 2022, ours were more like barbs, more erosion control type projects. And so when they submitted the invoice, we were kind of like, we didn't really agree to this. We looked at our information, but as a review of the joint powers agreement, it stated that they would try to do things more in line, and hence the concern in the question. And our hope is in the July 8th meeting, we can ask more questions and get a better understanding of their process and how this was selected and how they went through the approval through paying for the project with their funds, which tied us into the funds. So I have reached out to them, I have talked to them, and every board member had an item. Their chair had another event to go to, and they just hired somebody on earlier this year, and they did not want to send them here without enough information since they just came on with the project.
Cool.
Any other comments?
I have a question. So what was the purpose of this stream crossing? How did that fit into the goals of the project? You don't know?
That is why we want them to come and kind of explain it, because from our understanding, when we initially agreed that this was not one of those items, but when you look at what the program actually covered, it was covered with the program, and so we are trying to get a better understanding of how this went, because as reviewing the notes, this was never brought up in any of the possibility of the projects of the previous meetings.
Yeah, conceptually, we were interested in helping with a subset of the big overall project list that the NRCS EQIP program provides cost share for landowners. We specifically asked for exclusions on a number of items, and it never got included in our Joint Powers Act, specifically. Like we said, we do not want to be involved with helping you with irrigation facilities, for example. and that never got in there, so there was some I's not dotted and T's not crossed to get down to where we really wanted to be, so I guess it just happened.
And new directors, they wouldn't know the contents of the agreements and the discussions.
Who knows? But it appeared to be a stream crossing focused on equipment for a landowner. It was a brand new stream crossing. There was some cattle trailing, a minor amount shown in the photographs that we got, but it's a pretty big stream crossing now. It's for equipment.
No other
Mr.
comments?
Chairman,
Yes.
I would just like to add my view of it, that what we had approved was our participation, in my view, to help fund projects that would preserve as much as possible the riparian integrity along the stream. And so to me, focusing to a single stream crossing serves that purpose, as opposed to allowing the breakdown all along the stream of wherever cattle or whatever else may go, even though it also certainly was built to allow vehicles and machinery crossing.
Okay. No other comments or concerns? We'll move to number 15. In the informational item, progress report for Black Gap Ranch, and it seems like Director Driscoll.
Well, I think maybe my name landed on this because it's considered a conflict for McGregor.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so
You were out there.
that aside, what's your last name, Robin?
Whitcup. Whitcup.
Whitcup. So I just know her as email Black Gap Homo HOA or some such thing. But you know, Robin had been here some time ago and talking about, actually you had a proposal in hand to help remove sediment from it's an old stock dam that's silted in, and the board elected not to fund it. I guess been a month or two ago, I got an email from Robin talking about, well, might we kind of revisit this? And I said sure, and I wove McGregor in so that he could be in conflict. And actually, Mullally was on the email too, having been the former admin guy. So anyhow, the long story short, you know, Scott and I met Robin and several other people out there and looked at possibilities, and you know, they're still interested in you know, seeing if we might assist. And you know, I guess when they had been here before, I said, you know, I personally don't want to see us closing the door on this. You know, the request, you know, the portion of the project that was being requested from West Dakota was a pretty big portion. I said, I think, you know, to have a successful application, that probably needs to go down somewhat. But anyhow, we had discussions, and I think at this point in time, you know, Robin had intended to come here anyhow to you know, they've been turning wheels, and she was going to be an item from the public, but you've sat through a lot of our other stuff, and I think now you could just as well update us.
Okay. Well, thank you, I appreciate it. I just wanted to take the opportunity to stop in and kind of touch base with you guys and let you know that we have, in fact, been revisiting the project. The last meeting that we came to was very informative. We came in a little bit blind because we didn't know the process and necessarily everything about the water district. But we've taken advantage of the opportunities. We've had some good learning, and we're picking this up again, and we're making the investments that we need to as an HOA and private community to keep moving forward. So I just want to let you guys know that our focus so far had been the dam, and we did reach out to the state as well as the Army Corps of Engineer. We've also contracted, and we're working with TerraSite for engineering. We have fixed the dam. We're just in the finishing touches of putting on some gates to cut down on any debris and stuff that might travel through the dam and go downstream. We've been able to mitigate a lot of the erosion and stuff that was happening around the culverts that were heading downstream. We've also been able to work with Terrasite and determine that the culverts that we have in place are in fact in the right location. They've looked at the topography and surveys for the area. They've helped us determine the amount of water that's coming into it. I believe, if I have the terminology correct, the main basin that feeds into our pond, because the pond runs directly on top of a tributary that feeds Rapid Creek. So we've learned a lot, and so right now, since we're finished with the dam, our focus this year is to deal with all that sediment. So we've also been working with some environmental engineers and just determining what's actually in the pond now that the dam has been addressed. And we've got about 4 foot of water in the pond right now. And we were able to determine, based on testing that we did, that there's about 90 inches of sediment that has grown from the time that the dam was actually created. So there's quite a bit of sediment, and that's coming from all the way up on a hillside and following the watershed all the way down to our pond area. So we're in the process of working with some engineers and contractors to find out exactly what it's going to cost and what our time frame is to remove that sediment. And our vision is to get that done sometime late this year, over the winter, possibly because of the amount of sediment that is there. We anticipate it's going to take a long time to dry out, as well as getting heavy equipment in there is probably going to be a little bit dangerous, just due to sinking and stuff. So it's probably be something that we're looking for a time frame, probably towards the end of the year or in the winter when ground is frozen and we have less risk. But we're getting those numbers together, and I anticipate to have a formal proposal written and sent to you guys probably within the next 4 weeks, so that we can come and talk to you and fill you in more on all the details that we find and what we think we're up against and stuff in your next meeting. So, yes,
So did you and Jesse go and probe the sediment?
Yes.
So how much sediment depth did you say?
On average, we found around 90 inches.
90 inches.
Yep, 90. Yeah, we were a little shocked ourselves at the amount of sediment that is actually in there before you hit the solid ground. So we have quite a few cattails, and I didn't mention that we were able to coordinate with Rapid Valley Volunteer Fire Department last year, and they were able to burn all the cattails. And we're keeping an eye on those. There are some areas where you can walk. There's several feet of actual cattail growth on top of itself, so you can walk on it. It's a little mushy, but driving on it is going to be a little bit risky. So, but our intention is to take all of that out. We're going to keep an eye on the cattails, and the plan right now is to wait until the seed pods show, and that is the best time for spraying. And then we're going to spray again to keep those under control until we can get in there and actually get them dug out and get the pond reclaimed. So we did look at potential spraying via the water, which would have killed more of the cattail at the beginning of the year. But the risks of downstream contamination in the water, as well as there is some private property land on the side of the pond that has trees, and there was potential that we would kill private property trees. So we opted not to treat via water, and we're going to topically spray in probably around July when the seed pods are there. So to keep those under control so they don't continue to take over. So, yes.
So are you looking at ways to keep the sediment from building up again once you remove it?
Yes, that's a great question. What we intend to do is, after we get the bulk of it cleaned out, then the next step is to go forward and put in some sediment forebays and be able to control that and do regular maintenance to keep that sediment filling up and getting back to the condition it is over several years. Right now, we're working on some of the things that don't necessarily require heavy permitting. The Army Corps of Engineers is going to require some 404 and 401 permitting when we decide to do the sediment bays. So that's in our long-term plan as the next step after we get everything dredged out and cleaned out there.
And when you remove the sediment, where does it go?
We have actually been working with there is a private property location that is just south and west of us that has an area where they want to do some reclamation of grasslands and stuff, that they have a lot of slate exposed and stuff that they want to repurpose that organic material to help them reclaim some of their grasslands, etc., as well as build up around some pond areas that they have sediment and stuff flowing into. So we do have another party that is willing to take the organic material and stuff that we pull out of the pond. So,
Thank you.
you bet.
Said pond and dam, are they two different bodies of water, or are they the same one?
Oh, same one.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Okay, moving into item number 16, Chair's comments. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the meeting. As I stated, I had been in contact with the Pennington County Conservation District about that $7,500 and for scheduling them to attend a meeting to explain that project. I had attended the hydrology summit, hydrology conference. That was very interesting, and I enjoyed that greatly, and I appreciate doing that. I also sat in on a Water Smart meeting to get a better understanding of how that was going this I want to say month, but we know it's 2 months between meetings, and overall I've been working, and so I'd like to thank everyone for attending. That's my comments. Items from the directors. Go ahead.
All right, I've got a stack of them, so I'll try to be quick. The first is I've been invited to a range conservation camp with government agencies and others with a group called Anna Branch Solutions to work on low-tech restoration practices, so some of the things that I showed you up on the big screen. That'll happen in June. I was in a meeting with the city on another issue, and it came up that they don't actually have a sustainability plan for Rapid Creek. And so I think that the city is going to start to move towards having an actual sustainability plan for the creek. That's exciting. With the Black Hills Fly Fishers, we're working on a riparian restoration series of events. We've been doing a bunch of fundraising for that. Some of our sponsors include the Nature Conservancy, the Norfolk Society, the Mule Deer Foundation, Prairie's Edge, Isaac Walton League, Black Hills Environmental Coalition, Black Hills Fly Fishers, and Dakota Trout Unlimited so far. Our first speaker is going to be Dr. Emily Fairfax out of the University of Minnesota. She is amazing. She did her dissertation work at the University of Colorado, primarily in the slide I showed you with the wildfire coming right down to the green. That's some of her work. She will be speaking at the Journey Museum on June 18th. She's our kickoff to that series. After that, we're going to take some field trips as part of that series up to Silver Creek. And then depending on the amount of funding we can generate, we're going to continue to do speakers and films and field days and the like. The last thing on my list is we've been doing monthly creek cleanups. When we did it in conjunction with the city, we had 60 volunteers on our crew, and we retrieved 1,500 pounds of garbage from Rapid Creek. We did it again last weekend. We had 30 volunteers and pulled 30 bags of crap out of the creek. And our next one will be June 14th. That will be a event with the Black Hills Fly Fishers, the South Dakota Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and the Black Hills Sportsman's Club. We do a creek cleanup, and then where it gets really fun is after the creek cleanup, we have what we're calling a one fly event. We get flies tied from the boys at the Club for Boys. You'll reach into a bucket, you'll pull out one single trout fishing fly. You get 1 hour to catch as many fish or the biggest fish, and there'll be a prize for that. We've had a really good partnership with the club, and we appreciate the work that you and your volunteers, especially Christopher, are doing down there. We call it a one fly event because if we call it a competition, we need permits. So it is a one fly event. Again, we publicize our any of our efforts that we're doing in the creek or beaver dam analogs and that sort of business, primarily on social media. Join us if you can, and what I'd really like to do is this summer get as many of the members of the board as possible and bring you all out to Silver Creek to show you the kind of water we're holding on the landscape. It is phenomenal. The Anabranch Solutions is going to talk about how the stuff we're doing at Silver Creek can be scaled forest-wide. So some pretty exciting things in terms of protecting water. That's all I have.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody?
How much, in the scheme of things, how much water do you think can be retained by these analog dams?
That we've got to still try to quantify. That one dam I showed you with the Labrador near the water, that was probably about 5,000 gallons worth that we were holding behind that little dam. And keep in mind, we're not impounding it because it's still flowing through and going down. Scott Kenner had some work years ago, and I need to dig it up, trying to quantify how much a gallon of water is worth in Rapid City. And at that time, it was like 79 cents a gallon. And I've got to find that work, and Larry, maybe you can help me with that. Somewhere he's determined the price of water. And the city of Milwaukee, just as a total sidebar, reintroduced beavers to the Milwaukee River, and they saved $4 billion with a B dollars by keeping that water from flushing down the system. So it's pretty exciting work, and I'll continue to update the board as things evolve.
Is the Forest Service coming out with a report about this?
The Forest Service in the Northern Hills is really supportive. The Northern Hills District, Matt Scott is, and this is where things get really cool for me. Matt Scott is a range conservation ranger. And so he's looking at that water in terms of sustainable grazing and keeping, cows eating good grass. And to have that kind of support is exciting. Mystic District, right here where we're at, they're not on board yet, but they're getting pressure from Northern Hills and pressure from other sources to start to embrace this work.
I just say, Mr. Chairman, this is the kind of thing I'd rather put money in than keep throwing money at that West River pipeline thing.
When Bill had mentioned this is why I was completely okay with him presenting on it. Because I've heard, Dan, you had your hand up.
So who's your contact or contacts regarding a sustainability plan for Rapid Creek?
So it came up, we were in a meeting with Vicki Fisher, who is I think she's the head of the engineering department.
She's interim. She's planning and zoning or whatever, but she's been interim public works director, I believe.
Yes, Okay, so we were in a meeting with her and Roger Hall, and the fire department guys were there, the RCPD guys were there, the engineers were there, because we'd like to introduce woody habitat into the creek as an experiment, because we know that the more woody structure you have in the creek, the more trout you have. And so we were just introducing these concepts to the city because they're not fly fishermen. You know, they don't know that wood is important in the system. But during that meeting, Hans from the fly shop was talking about a city in Iowa that is putting $40 million to turn their local creek into something that resembles Rapid Creek. We don't need to put that kind of money in because we've got the resource right now. But as we were talking about that, Scott Anderson of Parks and Rec, along with Vicki Fisher, started to talk about the need for a sustainability plan for Rapid Creek. And I believe that Lisanne Zeller might be in that pipeline. She was at that meeting as well.
As you continue to probably participate in those deals, maybe because you're part of the 319 deal, be sure they're aware of what we're gonna be, spearheading and gonna need they need to be involved with these protection plans, because that's gonna be a template for basically, what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So there's two things with that. I'm very cognizant of that, because the work that we're doing doesn't have the big stick of money that the 319 could have. I mean, it's the stuff we're doing is cheap. But the other thing we're doing is we're building lots of coalition with lots of partners.
Yeah. I had a long conversation with Roger Hall at the, Hydro Conference about some of this stuff, and he might have forgot, but he was, sort of interested in, what we're gonna be getting involved in.
The takeaway from the meeting was, fire is concerned about keeping the waterway completely devoid of any wood because of the hypothetical kid who's going to be inner tubing down the creek, gets hung up on a strainer and drowned. And I can see that as a public safety aspect. I mean, that's very valid. But that was their concern. And also, it's stuff that they've never even addressed before. It's brand new to them. But when we left that meeting, Roger Hall said, how long would it take you guys to start to put this in? We said, Roger, we can have one in 30 minutes. And we're not talking about anything permanent. We're talking about a few posts and then stacking some woody debris up against it and pinning it in. But it would do our fishery, even, small things like that will do a great deal of benefit to our local fishery, which has suffered mightily due to that dewatering event that we had in 2022, I believe.
We lost a year class of fish.
And we lost every fish that went into a deep hole because a bigger fish ate them.
Yeah.
Our fishery is nothing like it was even a few short years ago.
Any other items from the directors?
Just to follow up on what you mentioned, we are continuing to work with the city, the Bureau of Reclamation, local folks, and our contractor Bar Engineering on our Deerfield-Pactola effort to determine if we can do a better job of managing that system in terms of water, management between the reservoirs and the streams. And so that's progressing. I think my understanding of the next sort of virtual meeting may be sometime in early August. They will have gotten to the point with the city and the Bureau where they think they have as much information as they're possibly going to squeeze out of them in terms of how they do business so that they can match the model to reality. And then once that occurs is when it's going to get more interesting. Well, there'll be other things involved there. They'll have some infrastructure metrics there as well as when things cause troubles. But then we're going to be, reaching out to other than this. I guess I'll call it the core group of players, which has been the city, the Bureau, and us, and and the contractors. So then the city and other parts of the city and the fly fishers and the marina operators and the paddlers and all of this kind of stuff will get, involved, and it'll become more interesting.
Okay, not seeing anybody else. Okay, we'll move on to item number 18, items from admin. You have anything?
I didn't think you were.
Oh, sorry.
I already mentioned the issues with Rapid Valley drying up due to the lack of water, so I won't dwell on that, but switching to one of our other projects, the Keystone Bridge, the Winter Street Bridge, we funded the process or this project to clear out underneath there. I talked to one of the trustees, Sandy McLean, a couple days ago, and they are done with that. So she would like to come and do a quick presentation maybe in July.
Okay.
It was a long time in coming. I was at the hydrology conference, and it was interesting. There was apparently this PFAS issue has now been discovered at the National Guard Air Base out at the airport. So I've kind of been tracking that. I don't know how that affects. There are people in the valley that have that wells, so I'm not sure if that's going to contaminate their wells or not. Let's see. Larry and I have been trying to get him switched over. It's called ASAP. That's the mechanism we use to pay bar engineering. So apparently we have to change you to the head of the organization. So we're going to try to do that. Hopefully that'll solve that problem. We've talked about Star Village quite a bit, and I don't really want to take sides on that necessarily, but it clearly was a problem. You could see down on the road below the sediment that was coming down off of there. And Director Koth brought up a valid point about liability, so that does concern me on that. But I think if we look at return on investment, if we could get that liability solved, and I'm not sure about the angle of the grade, that's kind of something I'm not familiar with, it being very steep, but I think that's, I hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. And talking to East Dakota Water Development District on their liability is probably a good idea. They are inherently different. We have no employees. Larry is a contractor. East Dakota has a staff, so I'm not sure how that would differ, but probably still be worth talking to him. And finally, I'm not a big fan of TIFs, but the county has a TIF number 7 coming up. That's going to affect, apparently I talked to Deb Hadcock, County Commissioner. It's going to drastically affect the drainage, improve the drainage down to the racetrack. So I'm not sure of the details of that, but it's something to keep an eye out for the valley. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, item number 18, items from admin.
Well, like Dan just mentioned that we've been trying for 2 months to get me permission to get ASAP. I just got an email from BUREC today that said one of their people started looking into the system, and they think that, and we were keeping Dan as head of organization until I got in, so we could still have access, because if we took him off and I couldn't get in, then we wouldn't be able to access money. But they said change that, and that should, so hopefully right after the meeting, we're gonna try to change it right here and see if I can get in.
So I don't have to create a new committee and put Director Mullally as head of ASAP and just let him deal with it.
No. I think this, if I could just jump in, this kind of illustrates the cost of compliance when you have federal contracts. This is taking a lot of time. So do we need to make a payment first, just in case? Before we change that?
No, because, no, I think we're good
Okay.
right now.
Is that everything?
Yep.
Okay, looks like Barry left, so there will be no items from the public. So I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for attending.
Are you gonna come back on the DVD and analog?
I don't anticipate that.
I talked to Chris about that, he told me about what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what works.
Yeah, I would have to see how that would work. How that would fit in.
Just say, well, the contract. I asked Chris to get proposals, because I would be willing to bring that forward.
Already removed light components were.
Good project.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good work. It's, yeah, really rewarding.
Basically, before I send you another update, right, so would be my guess. That's all fine and well.
Somebody should exact,
Squared up on that.
you walk in a room and there's a dial that says gravity, and you can just turn it down to 1/2 or something.